And welcome back to another episode of 5 Questions with the Paulist Fathers. Today, a unique place for us to be in. We're not going to talk to one of the Paulist Fathers, but rather a Paulist Associate. And so Denis Hurley joins us from the Massachusetts area. I believe you're in the Berkshires, where he's also a parishioner.
At the moment, yep.
He's also a parishioner at the Paulist Center in Boston. So Denis, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be with you. I didn't know I was unique.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
Denis, outside of our 5 questions, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say, what's a Paulist Associate?
Well, Paulist Associates are people who buy into the Paulist charism and feel a sense of connection to the Paulists and to the things that the Paulists do. They're people who are non-ordained, which is my word. I don't use lay ever. There are people who are non-ordained and male and female, and they're in almost all. I think all of the Paulist institutions have associates groups, including, for instance, Toronto, which no longer has Paulists there, but does have, and Tucson, I think, as well, have associates in places.
Right.
So it's we meet monthly. They have retreats together. There are retreats that we have together. We generally have a program that comes sometimes from wider sources and sometimes internally. There are interesting discussions. We've been meeting in Boston during this period when we're all on Zoom. We've been meeting more than the once. And as a matter of fact, a week or so ago, we met and talked about some interfaith issues. Tom Ryan, the Paulist priest, had written in the Associates world about Ramadan and Lent and Easter coming so close together this year. And so we were talking about the relationship of the various religions and so forth, which is of special interest to me. So, nice. Yeah. So it's good to be an associate. I like it, and I like the people.
Great. And so question 1 is, how have the associates been keeping up with the Paulists during all of this pandemic stuff?
I would think that the associates are keeping up pretty well from the ones that I'm in contact with, and indeed, almost all of that is by virtue of electronic communication in some way or other. We've had a couple of good things in Associates World, which is our newsletter by Paulist Associates talking about how they have dealt with the coronavirus situation. I've found that our particular group in Boston has been, so I say we've been meeting regularly at our regular meeting, but also occasionally other times, and communicating in emails and things like that. And but I do think that it's more of the Paulists keeping up with us. And I think that that's been remarkably good. As you know, I've been teaching mass communication and journalism for several decades and doing both of those things. And I am truly impressed by the way the Paulists have made themselves open. I told you earlier, I watched Charlie Donahue and I watched Rich Andre on your program here, and both of them were talking about the enthusiasm that they brought to the process of trying to find new ways of communicating. And that's been evident throughout, right from the absolute beginning. And I will give a plug here to Paul Snatchko, who has, I'm sure, been responsible for an awful lot of what's going on and making it possible for these things to happen. And I've been very much impressed by all of it from both a personal and professional point of view. So I think Paulists have done a great job. It's also absolutely certain to me that the Paulists are into reaching out.
Yeah.
They're into being out there in whatever way they can be, and that's one of the things I find most attractive about the association with them, and they do a really good job of it. So it has worked out well.
Yeah, and just so people know, Paul Snatchko is the Paulist Director of Communications, a non-ordained person as well.
Exactly.
And he has been doing a remarkable job, and
yeah,
a good friend. So. Question 2 is, do you miss going to Mass over at the Paulist Center?
Well, I miss the Paulist Center in general. And there are many things about going to Mass at Paulist Center that I miss. I was talking to someone the other day about the fact that it's not necessarily something that I can get into for the entire Mass. I'm happy to be there for the liturgy of the word. I'm happy to be there for all of it, but the actual totality of the Mass is something that for me needs to be in person. It needs to have people next to me. It needs to be smiling at people. It needs to be doing one of the things we do at Paulist Center quite well, which is singing. Not that I sing well, but the people in attendance sing well. And we have a great music director, and have had several great music directors there. And those things are a part of it. I'm very much into singing and praying. I'm a lector, but I'm also a member of the National Pastoral Musicians. Not because I am a musician, which I'm about as far as you can be from, but because I go to their conventions and I talk to them and about how lectors can be as well prepared for lecturing as musicians are for taking part in the Mass as musicians. And so it's a totality of the Mass that I miss. It's a totality of the community that I miss. It's not being with the people. I know that when I go into Paulist Center, we live in a town slightly outside of Boston, as most people at Paulist Center do. And when I go into the town, when I go into the city, and I just feel a comfort there. And it's been a comfort for me since about 1991 or so, I think. So it's been a good place. So yes, I miss the Mass. I miss the ritual. I miss the totality of it, as I said.
Yeah, nice. When you mentioned lectors, I was just reminded of a time when I was at a lectors workshop, and the presenter said, "Lectors should be on fire with the Word of God, and we should be pleased to watch them burn."
Well, I crashed and burned a couple times, but we have a good way of doing it at Paulist Center. We have lector teams, and each of 5 teams has a weekend every 5th week. And 10 days before that, we all meet.
Oh, nice.
And discuss the readings and talk about the background of the readings. And that Mike McGarry, who's our director now, has been tremendously helpful in that. He comes to the meetings and he has good knowledge. And some of us have some knowledge and others don't have a lot, but it's a good way to bring it all together. And it makes the process very good. It makes the process excellent. Speaking of that, I'm going to talk about missing Mass. I really missed the Vigil Mass this year. I watched it on screen, but going to the Vigil is one of the, and especially as a lector, one of the most exciting moments of the year.
For sure. So question 3, on a lighter note, what's your favorite quarantine book and maybe your favorite quarantine food?
Oh, okay. This is one of my favorite types of questions. Food is a big thing for me. We've been cooking a lot, and it sounds odd because we haven't been shopping. We have not left our house except for twice for very serious reasons since March 11th.
Wow.
We've been getting food and everything delivered, but I'm cooking, which I love to do, and it's become a great part of organizing my day in this disorganized period, having something to do that produces something good in the end, and generally just enjoying it. So I've done a lot of stews and soups. For instance, we're ordering meat from a farm cooperative.
Oh, wow.
Ordering fish from someplace in Louisiana. And I found you can do it without it being more expensive than you would think it would, because you will buy a lot and it looks expensive, but actually it's 20 meals worth.
Oh, wow.
Or something.
Yeah.
And we have a place up here called Berkshire Organics, which gives us vegetables and dairy and stuff. So it's all delivered, and we wash it off when it comes in, and we do the whole business. And then I cook. So the food is fine. Reading is another story, because do you have a bookshelf? I have had for decades a bookshelf that I've called a long illness shelf. It's there, books that I've either started or have it bought and said, I've got to read this, and I'm waiting for the long illness. So I can lie in bed for the 3 years before I die and read the doggone books. This has given me a chance to get to that a little bit earlier. And when I tell you what I've been reading, I have to give you background. In 2001, after September 11th, in the Ramadan following that, I began the practice of reading the Quran every night during Ramadan.
Interesting.
And that it's become interesting to me in trying to find my own place in the world and in the Catholic Church and in the Christian religion, in terms of the ways that people in various states of seeking look in different places based on their circumstances. And one of the books I've been reading is Roger Haight's Jesus, Symbol of God, in which he talks about the fact that faith flows from the culture. What makes the practice of the faith is the culture that it comes from. And so I've been reading Roger Haight. I've been reading Al-Ghazali and other Islamic Middle Ages people. I've been reading Maimonides, and I've been reading Thomas Aquinas, trying to see where all these people come together. But so yes, reading has been a part of life, and there is no one book. It's been this massive potpourri of stuff that I've been looking at. So.
Sounds like the start of a doctoral thesis or something. Putting all
No.
those people in conversation, you know?
No, thank you.
Been there, done that, right?
Way too old for that. We've got a PhD from Harvard in economics in the house, and that's plenty. So, my wife.
So, Dennis, as a journalist, if you could ask one question about COVID-19 to anyone right now, what would it be? And that's question 4.
Yeah. It would be the question I plan to ask only moments after I die. And the person I would ask would be God. And the question would be, what the heck were you thinking? Which is my question about all of Earth and all of life. But in this case, this is just, it's been, what should we be doing here? What's this about? No individual human being that I know has the answer. As lovely as President Obama was the other night on TV, as fine as Dr. Fauci, a Jesuit educated boy from Brooklyn like me, by the way, and others have said wise things, as much as Anderson Cooper and Dr. Gupta and all of those people say. I don't know anyone who has any answer, and I think that I really just want to know, how do I deal with this? And so I've got to go to the top for that one, frankly. I've got to say, and I do this with some frequency, I say, how am I going to continue this for what, maybe 2 more years? That's not a journalist question, it's a human's question, and it's one that's really makes a difference to me, so.
I'll say. Good. And so our last question 5, what lasting changes do you think this is going to have in the church?
This being coronavirus.
The pandemic, yeah.
There's one of my things I did, I teach a class in mass comm research. One of the things I do it by teaching them to read various scholarly articles and discuss them. And this time I did one based on sort of my own things that have been in my life. I had a woman from Texas A&M University wrote about the transition of religion to the digital world. And it's a fascinating article, and it's a very interesting discussion to have, because one is automatically, as I sort of said earlier, one is automatically opposed to the idea of not being with people in person, in the communal kiss of peace kind of life that we've gotten to live in the past 50 years or whatever since Vatican II. And so we're used to that. We want that. And Paulist Center is essentially a full of Vatican II people, all of whom are very elderly like me, and feel that a lot, you know. Many of them are not adept. I've had to become adept because of teaching for years at electronics, at communication, at various activities of this kind. I think that preaching would have to get better overall. We're lucky again at Paulist Center. Mike McGarry is a wonderful preacher, you know, and others that I've known are very good. But there are a lot of bad preachers. There are a lot of people who aren't they're not bad priests, but they're not great preachers, you know. Paulists have a good lead in that among some of the people I've known, I think, too. I think that we have to come to a different understanding of the transcendental nature of the Mass, and what does it actually transcend. We think of it as being the transition between heaven and earth as we approach the altar, sort of. But if we don't get to approach the altar, or if we translate our liturgies and our behavior and our rituals into a whole different kind of thing, like you and I are doing now, or like we do on Sundays now with the masses from the various churches, there's a whole other education. And you may actually have to educate a whole new congregation, a whole new set of congregations. And you may lose a load of people who are unwilling to maintain this, you know. My mother-in-law is in Austin. She's with her actually in Houston now. I sent her the Mass from St. Austin's online yesterday, and she said, I saw the pictures, but I couldn't get the sound on. And this is, you know, that's the way the world is going to go, I'm afraid. I think, I don't know what lasting changes it will have on the church. I think that the church is in the process of needing some lasting changes to begin with. I told you I was at Fordham during Vatican II. So I grew up in the old church, came to the Vatican II church, and have lived sort of in and out of that for the last many years. I was thinking of this the other day. I think if I were to define myself right now, I'd say I'm a pre-Vatican III Catholic, because I think there are changes that have to come, and people who are thinking about it need to be thinking about it, and that's about where we stand. I think that, to go back to where we started, I think the Paulists are well positioned for that. Some of the young guys, Matt Berrios, people like that, Rich Andre, sharp, and they're listeners. They're good listeners, and they're good at taking the thoughts of the non-ordained, and that's a real thing that's going to have to keep happening if it's going to work. So,
indeed,
that's what I know.
Well, there you go. Well, it's always good to see you here, and this has been 5 Questions with the Paulist Fathers, or as we could probably say, 2 Fordham guys talking.
There you go. Now, were you downtown or uptown?
I was uptown.
The real one.
The real one, right?
Fordham.
As we like to say, yes.
As I tell Ruben Patino.
Fordham has 2 campuses, for those who might not be aware.
That's
one
right.
in Manhattan, one in the Bronx. The Bronx is the one that's a more traditional college campus, so I would say.
Exactly. And a place called home.
Yes, exactly. But Denis Hurley, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you.
Great, Mike. It was good to talk to you. Thank you.
All right. Take care.